Hello and welcome to the 007 Files, a podcast where we open up the filing cabinet drawers and look at every and any aspect of our favorite fictional spy, Bond, James Bond. I'm co-host Javi Trujillo, and joining me today are my fellow 00s, David Leigh and Bill Koenig. How are you today, gentlemen?
I am
hanging in there.
Okay.
Well, in this installment, we're looking at some recent news items in the world of 007. Let's start off with, well, the lack of any updates from CinemaCon. Something I know a lot of people were hoping we would get some kind of news, be it a date. I didn't expect Bond to be announced, but maybe the start of production, a release date, something. Not for production to start, but like a production start date. David, you posted quite a few videos on this over at the James Bond Dossier YouTube page. What was said at the con and how did it meet your expectations? Or did it meet your expectations?
Well, to answer that first, it actually met my expectations pretty much spot on. I wasn't really expecting them to say very much more than acknowledge that there's a director and a writer attached, and I didn't really think that they would do much more. I was hoping that they would give a release window, but I really didn't see that they would commit to that event because it isn't really the right venue for it. Because, at the end of the day, CinemaCon isn't about fans or it's not about cinema goers. It's about theater operators, and so it's a very, very different message that you give them. And so it was pretty much what I expected.
The technical term is business to business. That's what CinemaCon is. It's the studios talking to the theater owners. By contrast, something like the San Diego Comic-Con, which studios in recent decades have used as a forum to release details about upcoming projects, is much more of a fan, consumer-oriented thing. This, as I said, it's business to business. My personal thing, I thought maybe they might say, and we hope to start filming next year, something vague like that. But they didn't even go that far.
Well, and like you were saying, it's for theater owners, and really it's there to hype up what's coming out in the immediate future, like summer 2026 and maybe like some 2027 plans. And the fact that, we didn't get a window isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It just means that, they're not going to rush it to meet a certain date. They're going to take their time. And they were quoted as saying, I know you're all wondering when we're going to announce who's playing James Bond. And this was Courtney Valente. Is that right,
Valente,
Bill?
yes.
Head of film at Amazon MGM. She said, "Don't get too excited. Please know that we're taking the time to do this with care and deep respect. It's the dream of a lifetime for all of us to bring audiences this next chapter, and it's a responsibility we don't take lightly. What I can tell you is this: when you pair one of the most beloved franchises in history with a world-class filmmaking team, including the brilliant director Denis Villeneuve, extraordinary producers Amy Pascal and David Heyman, executive producer Tanya Lapointe, and screenwriter Stephen Knight, you're setting the stage for something that's truly worthy of the Bond legacy. The film is coming, and when the time is right, we'll have much more to share," which I think probably is the best thing. I think, David, it was one of your videos where you pointed out that, when we first heard about Amazon, like a lot of people were like, there's going to be 1 million, streaming shows and they're going to dilute the brand. And so far, that hasn't been the case at all. Like we still, outside of Road to 1 Million, which was done under Eon, they haven't really been taking advantage.
They've been taking things very, very slow and steady, which, it's frustrating as a Bond fan, but on the other hand, it means they're not rushing in to screw it up. So, there's a plus and a minus to that. So,
well, and to compare that to Star Wars under Disney ownership, there's been a history of overpromising and under-delivering.
Yeah.
Where they announce projects and then you never hear of them again. Oh, there's going to be a Rey movie. Well, good luck with that. In fact, Stephen Knight, who's of course attached to write the next Bond movie, he worked on that for a while and left like, okay, he apparently did a number of drafts like, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. And given those two choices, I would rather have a lack of news than have hyped up stuff that nothing happens with. Because when you have no news, at least you can't say you're disappointed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because if you look at the last 10 years of like Comic-Cons or D23s, any kind of like big thing where they're pushing their slates, like how much of that comes to fruition? Like with DC, a lot of their initial slate fell by the wayside. Even their new slate under James Gunn, a lot of that has changed over the course of the last 5 years. Universal had their Dark Universe franchise where they were going to unite all their monsters, and that got one movie deep, and now it's completely gone. And even like you're pointing out, Star Wars, there was Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, and so many other movies like Taika Waititi's movie that are nowhere to be seen at this point. We've got The Mandalorian and Grogu next month, and then next year we have Starfighter, and I think it's Starfighter. That's kind of it for like theatrical movies. Like pumped out a movie every year and made all these shows, and then they just couldn't keep up the quality, and now they're kind of paying the price for that. So I'm very glad to see that at least someone's paid attention to the waters and they're taking their time to do it right, not just rushing it out to get a product in the market and get some of that investment back.
Also with Comic-Con, I think it works best when there's actually something to show.
Yeah.
Because the same evening that Amazon MGM made its presentation, they showed something related to this remake of the Thomas Crown Affair with Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
And Universal showed some footage from The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan. And then the next night, Disney had a trailer related to Avengers Doomsday, and I don't think that trailer's been released yet as of this recording. You know, Comic-Con works best when you actually have something to show the theater owners. And with the next Bond movie, there's not been a frame of footage shot. There's no Bond. So I guess we shouldn't be too surprised. I thought there might, as I said, I thought maybe they might say something about starting filming next year, but they didn't even go that far.
Which, I mean, really, we weren't expecting anything anyways. With the release of Dune 3 being so imminent, he's getting that across the finish line before starting on anything Bond anyways. So I'm sure we'll hear more in 2027.
I was just going to say, I think CinemaCon actually also had some Dune 3 footage shown.
That's right. Yeah, I think they showed 7 minutes of it or something like that, and which was supposedly very impressive. But what I was going to say was that, I mean, my feeling is that Villeneuve will start working on Bond 26 this year, because post-production isn't like production when it's a full-time job, pretty much 24/7. He can't afford time while he's directing to look at a script draft or anything like that. In post-production, he's going to have periods where it's intense, but he's also going to have periods when he's got much more time on his hands. And so I think he will have already been spending time on Bond 26. Once he can really spend more time on Bond than on Dune is when I think we're going to start having him look at actors in earnest, I think.
I think there's a window for Villeneuve. I can't say exactly when it'll start, but like maybe June-ish. And then, and that would last until the fall when Dune 3 goes into full publicity mode. So 4 or 5 months, maybe. I'm as strictly an educated guess, but yeah, I think there is a period coming up where he can at least do some work on the next Bond film.
Next up, let's tackle some literary news. In what was not an April Fool's prank, IFP announced King Zero with a live announcement in the UK. They did a whole thing, and Charlie Higson was present outdoors, and they projected images and a countdown that finally led to the revelation of King Zero, which is available to pre-order, releasing the 24th of September, 2026. They stated, the press release says, Le Chiffre, Dr. No, Goldfinger, James Bond has faced them all, but now the world is changing, and even 007 has no idea what's coming for him. It starts with a murdered agent in the Saudi desert. Only a traitor could have known enough to bring him down. But even James Bond can't guess at the secret that was worth killing him to keep. As Bond follows the trail across the globe, he doesn't realize the countdown has already begun. And hiding in the shadows is a man with more power than he could ever have imagined. Prepare for a villain unlike any before. Prepare for King Zero. So, Bill, what's your take on all this?
Well, that live event was the evening UK time of March 31st. So that way they could say, not an April Fool's joke. And then the formal press release went out the next morning, April 1. But they also invited...
This was the worst timed event. If they'd wanted to time it worse, they couldn't have.
They also invited some friendly, shall we say, influencers.
Recent guest, Mark Woldridge was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Our previous guest. In fact, Javi, you alerted us to what Mark had posted, I think, on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I called it up, and then I eventually saw the video. Yeah.
It was kind of odd, to do it.
Yeah.
It felt like a very small announcement, the way they did it with the amount of people they had, and none of us, knew it was coming. It was just very UK centered, which, I mean, it's Bond, so I get it. But you couldn't find anything official about it on IFP until April 1st.
Yeah.
And the weird thing was that I received a press release from Ian Fleming Publications agency, and but it was about 1:00 in the afternoon, and I can't see the point in sending something out that late because, the publicity went via the influencers, the chosen influencers the previous night. I'd already published on my website, and to send it out, 12 hours after I'd actually hit publish just seems absurd in this day and age. It seems like something from the 1950s.
I looked at the timestamps. I got a similar email, and I figured it was it had arrived in my inbox about 14 hours after the event on the evening of March 31st. I think it was about 8 p.m. UK time on March 31st. So it was in the middle of the afternoon, my time, East Coast time in the US. But, it's like in a moment of frustration, I said, yeah, it's too bad that you botched it. And then Higson saw it and he replied, well, you're the only person who thinks that. Well, just because I'm the only person doesn't mean I'm wrong. So,
well, you're the only person who expressed that, and he saw. Doesn't mean you're the only person who thinks that, because I think that too. It was weird. It was weird. I'm quite looking forward to the book. It inspired me to pick up on His Majesty's Secret Service again, have another read of that, which I'm doing on the back of The Hook in the Eye. So, yeah, I don't know.
There's one more odd element is okay, we have the conclusion of the Kim Sherwood trilogy.
I was going to mention that.
Coming out.
Yeah.
And then you're going to, almost within a few months, switch gears to go to Higson. And while they're both time shifted, I assume they're not the same continuity because IFP seems to have decided each author gets their own continuity. We're not going to try and hold them all to the same continuity because Anthony Horowitz, who had 3 very popular books, they were time shifted into the Fleming time frame. William Boyd and others have done
Jeffrey Deaver
done Bond stories, as period pieces. So I'm guessing that the Kim Sherwood trilogy and Higson's new book are not tied together. I mean, we'll know for sure if Bill Tanner shows up in the Higson's book. Hey, I'm back. I've been in purgatory for a while from that Sherwood book, but I'm back now.
The other thing that's weird about the literary Bond at the moment is how the authors are getting shifted, because Raymond Benson obviously was the Bond author of the 90s. He's now shifted to Felix Leiter, where
in the 50s.
Young Bond... Yeah, and actually, so we've had an author shift onto a different character and shift back in time. Charlie Higson has gone from being the young Bond author in the 1930s or whenever young Bond was set, maybe 1920s, I guess, and into modern Bond. So he's time shifted as well as been upgraded. And I don't know, it's just occurred to me that the other night, it's curious.
Yeah, the IFP said, "We are delighted to be working with Penguin on the publication of King Zero, Charlie Higson's return to James Bond following his outstanding success with On His Majesty's Secret Service. And we're delighted to be working with Charlie again, bringing the next chapter of Bond to fans." And they also say, "We can't wait to make this the coolest, classiest publication of the year." And to Bill's point, Hurricane Room comes out the 21st of May. And as I stated at the top, this book comes out in September. Both have contemporary James Bonds, which was Deaver the last? Yeah, Deaver was the last book set in the modern day, other than the novella. So it's very odd that all of a sudden we're not only just going back to the modern day, but like two in the span of a few months.
Yeah, in the modern era, but potentially with different bonds, different timelines as well. It's very, very curious.
Well, also with the Deaver book, yes, it was time shifted, but also it was supposed to be the start of a new series with the codename Project X. And whereupon, it's a modern day Bond. I believe Deaver's Bond was about 30 and whatever, but then there were no more Project X stories after Deaver's. We went to...
Was it Falks after that?
Like I say, the likes of William Boyd and others.
Yeah, because that was supposed to be him kickstarting a new continuity. And they had that big launch, and they had the new Bentley that was part of it. And this is the Bentley that Bond's driving now. And it went nowhere. I find it really odd that with, all the buildup, for Sherwood's books, like her trilogy has been building to Bond, to them finding, because he's been missing in the first two books. And to finally get to the third book where they're like, here he is, it almost feels like they're sweeping it under the rug a bit by immediately thereafter throwing in another Bond novel, right on top of it, set in, the modern day. I can say about Hurricane Room that we will be covering it here on the site. We'll most likely have a YouTube review of the book coming out after May 11th. Thereabouts. That's when the embargo lifts. We've been given a review copy, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So I'm curious how that's going to dovetail into whatever Higson's doing. But personally, I liked On His Majesty's Secret Service. I haven't read the revised edition yet, which has some of the inaccuracies of the first smoothed over. But I liked it, and I like what Sherwood's doing. So at the end of the day, it's kind of a good thing. We went from this drought of Bond, and now we're getting two new contemporary novels, a video game, the movies in the works. It almost feels like the 90s again, just a little bit.
Well, one of the criticisms of Higson's novella On His Majesty's Secret Service, I heard some people complain, there's too much politics because there's references to Viktor Orban, who, as we record this, just lost re-election in Hungary. Marie Le Pen, and there's too much politics. But I did a post at the time, said, well, if you look at the Fleming originals, there's lots of references to politics. It's politics from 70 years ago.
Yeah, so you don't recognize it like you would today.
Right. Like Khrushchev, Kennedy get mentioned. The Suez Crisis is mentioned, at least in passing. There's plenty of politics in the Fleming originals. Fleming was originally a journalist, and he knew what was going on in the world, and he dropped in references in his stories. In fact, in the Fleming originals, trade unions were basically an extension of the Soviet Union. Like Le Chiffre ran a trade union, and then he embezzled money and invested in brothels. Friendship cracked down on brothels. Oh no, I've lost all this money. I got to get it back. And also in From Russia with Love, there's some reference to that, because Bond is a little concerned when some union guys are checking out his house, or his flat, I should say. And, if you're familiar, and I'm not an expert by any means with 1950s politics, there are references there. I thought the criticism was a little overwrought personally, but
No,
Your mileage may
I agree
vary.
with you on that point. And that's just my thing overall. Like, it can be fun to do these retrospective novels like we just had with, now his name just slipped out of my head because I've got all these other Bond authors in my head now. But like the most recent trilogy with Trigger Mortis, like it's fun to go back and do that and set things in the Fleming timeline. But like to me, like Fleming wasn't writing period pieces. He was writing, things that were set in the modern day for him. Or, it's like Eon has said 5 minutes into the future. So that's just always been my preference because that's what I've known growing up. All the movies were set in the present day. And until, after the original Raymond Benson novels ran their course, like that's when we started looking backwards. And I think we should be looking forward with Bond. And that's why I'm really happy to have like Kim Sherwood and have Charlie Higson writing in the modern day.
Real quick, there's a fundamental difference of when you write in the present day and then when you write in a period piece. Let me give you a quick non-Bond example. So one of the first Raymond Chandler Philip Marlowe movies was Farewell, My Lovely. And it was adapted in 1942 as the movie Murder, My Sweet. And then in 1975, it was adapted again, but as a period piece with Robert Mitchum. The Murder, My Sweet had Dick Powell. Anyway, if you watch the two movies, I like them both. But when you watch the latter, it's like they hit you over the head with all the time references. It's like, we get it. Sometimes when you write something as a period piece, the author wants to show off what they know about the period. Oh, what's his name? Came out in 2008. Sebastian Faulks. Like his novel was set in 1967 and there's like references to the Rolling Stones. It's like, we get it, Sebastian. You've done some research into what was going on in the 60s. Like, will you let up, please?
It's a fine line to try and establish it when you're writing about a different time period, I think. And, some people probably do it better than others. But speaking of the modern day, finally, IOI is ramping up their marketing with First Light. Most importantly, dropping the game's title track by Lana Del Rey and written by David Arnold on April 16th. This followed with the main titles being revealed on the 17th, which was the same day that their exclusive 007 First Light limited edition DualSense wireless controller went on sale for the PS5. This premium controller shines with the boldness of one who needs but a single shot to settle a score, featuring a golden sheen and radiant barrel design, there to frame Bond's iconic codename and weapon. This limited edition controller is well suited for a fresh agent looking to make a name for themselves.
I understood golden sheen, the rest of it.
If I'm not mistaken, like neither of you had plans to pick up either the controller or the game itself, but what did you think of the song?
Thought the song was very solid. I listened to the song first, and then this morning as we recorded, I saw the title video. The song sounds very Bondian with David Arnold's involvement. I'm not surprised. On the titles, look like this is a matter of attention to detail. It looked like for the font for the titles matched recent Bond movies. Somebody pointed out, oh, this is the first thing without an Eon credit.
It still maintained the, Ian Fleming's James Bond title,
right.
But yeah, that was a change. Also, it didn't credit who did the main titles either. I was looking to see if Daniel Kleinman had any involvement, but I haven't found anything about who did that main title sequence. But it definitely is evocative of his main titles or those done by Mark 12 for Quantum of Solace. David, how do you like the song?
Well, I found it a bit of a bore, to be honest. I wanted to like it. It's like Lana Del Rey. I've tried to listen to her before, and she got a good voice, but her music, it doesn't hold me at all. And this song with David Arnold, I thought maybe that would help, but I had the same thing. I can't. I listened to it twice to start with, and halfway through the second listening, I realized I wasn't even listening to it at all. And so I tried to listen to it a few times today for this podcast. But I think one of the things that stands out is that it sometimes sounds quite a lot like The World Is Not Enough, which is unsurprising because I think David Arnold was involved in that as well. And so I guess what I'm hearing there is David Arnoldisms, but it just sounds so very, very generically Bond. And maybe it'll grow on me. I don't know. I think it's never really good to judge a song by the first listening or even the first handful of listenings. Maybe it'll get there for me, but at the moment, no. And I don't know. The titles again. It seems quite a lot like a Bond movie, but I know that there's no Bond movie to follow, so it doesn't really do it for me. And the two things I noticed about it is that when Bond's running up some steps or something, he just looks like a video game character. And so from that point of view, it's unsurprising he is a video game character here, but it doesn't really seem real, which I'd expect to see in something that's kind of semi-cinematic like this. The other thing is that there appears to be Scooby-Doo in the titles 45 seconds
I didn't catch that. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it again for the 5th time.
Wait, how do you mean, David? It's like Scooby-Doo. Like I don't think that's what you mean.
Scooby-Doo appears on screen. It's like 47 seconds in. You take a look at it again and you'll see.
My first impressions were that I liked it because they dropped it with a lyric video, which reading the lyrics as you're listening to it for the first time, like the game references of, first light, you've got one life, like a lot of that, it hits you in the face a lot more. It didn't have, to me, like the swagger of like, say, Surrender. But yeah, on repeat listens, I'm actually getting really swept up in it. I'm really starting to enjoy it now. Like the Arnoldisms, like you said, you've got your twangy guitar. You do have some elements of brass to it. I like her voice. And comparing it to the other games, like we've had Estero doing Nearly Civilized for Nightfire. Joss Stone did a song for Bloodstone. Everything or Nothing had Everything or Nothing by Maya. And even, I want to say it's Casino Royale, but it's Quantum of Solace. It had its own unique Bond song in it that, this feels very much like a part of that. Like it feels Bondian enough to me. And, I'd rather listen to this than All Time High. So I'm a fan of it. It's growing on me. It's not top tier by any stretch for me yet, but I am liking it a lot. So, and to your point, David, like it doesn't, like there's no movie to come after it. Watching the main titles, like there's a lot of unique imagery amidst all the guns and, silhouettes of women that hopefully I assume are going to pay off once you play the game. Just like, any Bond movie, you watch the main titles and then after you watch the movie, you go back and watch it again. And then you pick up the symbolism that they're laying down. Cause at this point you have, no idea. Or, Bill, it's like Mission Impossible where they would show you scenes of the episode of what's to come amidst the wire burning down. And you don't really know what it all means until the show's over. So I'll be curious how I feel about the main titles over time once the game has been played. And while David Arnold does the title song, the game's score will be done by The Flight, which is a team composed of Alexa Smith and Joe Henson. IOI's posted a video about the sound of the game. A lot of it talks about, going out in the real world, capturing, what a gun sounds like being fired in the snow, recording the real sound of Aston Martin's revving. But in terms of the score, they're looking for something that's going to last, they said. They want to have a classic Bond sound, but they want it to not be necessarily tied to any particular era. Like they don't want it to sound like, if you think of like Moonraker has its disco-y elements, especially at the end, or there's a techno sound to David Arnold's Brosnan scores that he didn't carry over into his Daniel Craig work. So they're trying to have something that elevates itself from the time period in which it's made. And a key thing is they're recording the score at Abbey Road, which, if you're a Beatles fan or just a music fan, lots of great scores are done there. And they've got a whole, orchestra there doing the score, which is really exciting to hear. Also, the way they're going about the score is kind of like the Casino Royale movie. Like this is Bond earning the number. So as the game progresses, you earn more of the Bond music as you go through. So much like we saw David Arnold, like he didn't get really the full Bond theme until the end of the movie. It seems like the game is going to go for a similar tactic where you may get a little bit here and there. And as you go on, the more you'll get of that recognizable theme. What do you think of that approach?
It sounds sensible. I probably won't play the game. I find it incredible that games are so complex in terms of production these days. And, when I was a kid, we had things like, probably you haven't even heard of this, Manic Miner. He had just this rough 8-bit soundtrack. They didn't have a studio. It was all digital and it sounded terrible, but it was brilliant. Now you hire Abbey Road and you have Lana Del Rey and David Arnold producing the theme song. And I don't know. It's just something
it's
that
definitely
I would never
a
have
very
predicted.
big deal. And it's like I was saying earlier, like this feels like a nice gap filler as we wait for Bond 26. Going back to what I said earlier in the conversation, like in the Brosnan era, you would have GoldenEye, then you would have the novelization, then you had Agent Under Fire, then you had Tomorrow Never Dies, Agent Under Fire came out after The World Was Not Enough, but you had a new Bond game to play in between films. And in between that, you had a new book to read. So it feels like we're finally getting back to that era again after this long gap of 2015 to now where we had a movie and some comics that not a lot of people read.
Yeah. Well, and also in the 90s, you had your continuation author of note, Raymond Benson, doing the novelizations in between his original novels. So there was continuity in there, and he would drop in things into the novelizations. Are they canon? Are they not? Well, but it's
and not to say we haven't had Bond books in the last 10, 15 years, but the output that IFP has been doing as of late, between, the 00 trilogy, the Q novels, which I haven't gotten into yet. They have that other James Bond and his Secret Agent Academy kid book thing coming. And, Charlie Higson now writing again, Raymond Benson's books. Like there's a lot of literature that's coming out. But
there's no continuity between them. Each seems to exist in their own separate
One thing
deal.
I will say about all the books that they're doing at the moment is I don't think they've announced whether Raymond Benson will be following up on the Felix Leiter novels, but I certainly hope he does. For me, that is the strongest spin-off that they have had.
I guess I would like it better if I thought that IFP cared more about the American audience than it seems to. Like with the Raymond Benson book, is it available in print in the US?
I have it on my
is
shelf.
It just the ebook?
I'm trying to think if I ordered it from IFP. I think I might have ordered it from IFP.
But did you?
So,
yeah. Because I remember this, a decade ago during the Horowitz era, it was like he had a book. It was going to be published, one of his 3 books. It was going to be published at the end of May, coinciding with the birth date of Ian Fleming. But the American version was going to be out till October, November. I said, fine. And then somebody said, well, you can order it from IFP. I said, listen, if they don't care about me, I'll wait till it comes in.
I think it was available from Amazon in the US because I had a problem getting it. I couldn't order it and get it delivered to Spain. They would not send it to Spain from either the Ian Fleming Publications website, from Amazon UK, or from Amazon US. And
it is
on
Amazon
absurd.
right now. So I don't remember seeing it when we were at Barnes & Noble the other day at the bookstore. So I'll have to look for that to see if it's actually on physical shelves or just, something to get online. Which, that just goes to where we are in the modern day. Bookstores are fewer. Barnes & Noble's trying to reinvent themselves a little bit, but, where's the market and where is the money at? And, how many people read?
Well, when it comes to the American literary market, with Bond. The two people who did the most to jump Fleming sales were Hugh Hefner and John F. Kennedy. And they're both long gone. And, maybe from IFP standpoint, it's not worth it for them to do much.
I saw a video. I didn't watch it, but just the thumbnail of how Amazon is ditching Kindle. So what good is your Kindle now kind of thing, which I'd never heard anything about that. The support for their e-reader.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a Kindle, or my wife does. And that's, it's like, that's how I got the William Boyd book. I got it through Kindle rather than getting a physical copy. And I got other books that way. And it's like, oh, well, this is the first I heard of it. So like, I may not be able to access those anymore.
And when it comes to the literary side, I mean, that's where Bond was created. And I love reading new Bond adventures in that format. But, to keep the character fresh, I mean, to get the biggest audience, I mean, it's basically a movie or a game, I feel like, especially if you want to bring in newer fans. So I don't know how many, 15-year-olds are like, oh, there's a new James Bond novel, let me go get it, versus, oh, there's a PS5 game by the guys who made Hitman. Let me give this a go. So the world's changing, but we still have Bond. Any final thoughts before we close it out? I don't have any other news updates that I can think of right now.
When it regards the next Bond movie, I was going to say, I don't think there's any reason to hit the panic button because of the lack of news out of CinemaCon. Now, if it's still that way in October, well, we'll revisit it. But like for right now, I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we know they're working on it. They've got a director. They've got a screenwriter.
Knight has said he's been working on it. So, yeah.
I mean, there's going to be a point fairly soon, I think, where it's going to really start moving, and we're going to be kind of shocked by how fast it does move once it gets moving. But we're not there yet, as we know.
All right. Well, if there's nothing further, let's put a pin in this conversation for, next time. You got some cool things coming down the pike. Like I mentioned, Hurricane Room. We'll be talking about that next month, I'm sure. And until then, just go to our YouTube channel, go to wherever you get your podcasts to listen to all our episodes. David, anything to promote or point people towards?
There is nothing in particular that I have, except I would say to listeners, if you want to get in contact, well, my email address is m@thejamesbonddossier.com. If you want to send something to all of us to that, I can forward it to you two. We ought to get an email address set up for this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Bill, besides the Spy Command, anything to talk about? Anything to promote?
A few weeks ago on the 007 Files YouTube channel, I had a short video Javi graciously edited for me, and about some of the Bond vehicles held by the Ian Fleming Foundations. Again, it's short, but if you've never seen it, it might be worth a look.
No, I mean, it's short and sweet. And yeah, there's some really cool things in that video that John Cork shot for you.
Yeah.
So it was a pleasure to edit that together and put it up there. And finally, I slipped my mind really quick for news. Diamonds Are Forever. The CD just arrived this week for me from La La Land, which I've been listening to. It's really exciting. It's really, really good. And La La Land also just announced a vinyl edition of The Man with the Golden Gun. And as usual, there are two versions, one from La La Land exclusively, which has got like a gold dusting kind of look to it. And then there's a $1 million edition that costs more at the 007 store. And it's like 200 fewer copies of that. So did either of you get any of that vinyl or pre-order the vinyl for The Man with the Golden Gun?
I did not, because while I have turntables, don't have them set up yet. I believe, but keynote, that vinyl thing from La La Land, I think it's limited to 700 copies. The original CD version, I think, was 5,000. That may, if you're a vinyl fan, that you might want to know that if you want to decide whether to get it or not.
Moonraker is not my favorite soundtrack, so I hesitated on the vinyl version of it because I had the CD, and now it's sold out and going for double what it cost on like eBay. So, David, did you get the Man with the Golden Gun vinyl
I
pre-order?
did not. No, I don't buy vinyls. I reserved my turntable, which is set up for old records, but these days I stick to CDs.
It will be I will be interested in the Diamonds Forever set from La La Land. The very first soundtrack I actually purchased when I didn't listen to the library. I actually bought it was Diamonds Are Forever in 1971. And the outside is a little beat up, but the vinyl inside is still good.
And Musica Bond did an interview with Neil S. Bulk promoting the Diamonds CD release. So, Neil's been on the show graciously talking about Thunderball. Now he's talking Diamonds Are Forever with Musica Bond. That's a good listen too. So go check that out. And hopefully, they drop something else this year besides just Diamonds Are Forever. So that'll actually do it, I think, for today's episode. And thank you for listening. Again, go to the YouTube channel, download the episodes wherever you listen to your podcast, and the 007 files will return.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.